kick off the first section now. Let me introduce Karen Smith. Karen Smith is an engaging leadership expert from Australia, and she's a frontline leadership team facilitator and coach who has a passion for growing frontline managers into frontline leaders. Karen's philosophy is simple. She believes that being a great leader is like being a great gardener. She uses this philosophy to help people understand how to help and a more natural approach to leading the yield results. Originally a human resource practitioner, Karen has been nurturing frontline leaders for more than 20 years. Her experience comes from working organizations of all shapes and sizes, representing industries diverse as IT, financial services, direct selling, education, public sector, military and professional association. Along the way, she has led teams of permanent and temporary and volunteer workers. To add on practical experience, she has a degree in adult education from the University of Technology, Sydney, and formal qualification in human resource management and facilitation. And she is also the author of the book, Lessons in Leading from the Garden, and a guide on engaging people of all ages and career stages. Without further delay, I would like to have Karen say.
Selamat pagi. That is about all the Malay that I have, yes, except for important things like terima kasih.
So nowadays we don't like this great man approach or the charisma theory, because charisma doesn't necessarily make you the sort of leader that we need today. And in fact, I've got some research I'm going to talk to you about later on about how overconfidence gets leaders in trouble. You can be too confident. Okay. Oh, I've got 5 minutes. Good. So does that answer your question? Yeah. But it is one where you could debate for the whole day, just that one point. So yes, if you've always thought that I'm not a leader, my sister was. She was the kind who was always leading. It doesn't mean you can't develop those skills. In fact, can I just do a little quick survey? Put your hand up if you are the firstborn child. Traditionally, if you're firstborn, I'm firstborn, we're supposed to be the leaders. That's our job. Now, I know in Malaysia we have much bigger families than we do in Australia. And maybe in Australia we have 2, maybe 3 children. I know in Malaysia the average is a little higher than that. You know, that you have to kind of lead because there are many siblings to help your parents to look after. So that idea that you have to be first and it's an advantage, not necessarily. You know, I know many firstborns who actually do anything they can to not lead because when they were younger it was required of them and they like to rebel against that. So it's not necessarily about replacement in the family or whether it's natural. I believe if you want to develop it, you can. It's almost like, think of it this way, a seed still needs to be germinated. Right? It has the potential there, so you can have the potential to be a leader, but if it's never brought out, no one will ever know about it. So I see you as all potential leaders, whatever that means in your industry or organisation. So, I suspect that just for a moment, just for a little bit more while we get organised for this little transition, just turn to someone, it doesn't have to be the same person you spoke to before, and talk about, of the things that we've discussed so far, what's one thing that you found interesting, useful, made you think? I'm not going to ask you to tell me the answers, just for you to do some reflection. Right? We've been talking around a few things. Have a chat. You've got 30 seconds. Go.
They're leaders. It doesn't matter what country I visit, and I work not only all across my country, Australia, but also New Zealand and throughout Asia. And one thing I find that all of our countries have in common is a desire to see the lives of everybody who lives there improved. And I think there's no better way to do that through leadership. And
that amongst them may be the first female Prime Minister of Malaysia. Oh, who thinks it's going to be someone from their family? Yes? Who thinks it's going to be their organisation is? Whether it's to make a profit, whether you are in what we in Australia call the not-for-profit or the humanitarian industries, regardless of what it is, there are some common things that we can all do. Now, can I get someone to maybe put up my slides for me? So I might just take you through a few of my early slides that I have, and I know you've all got copies of them, but I wanted to start talking about this whilst we're waiting for our opening keynote speaker to come. Who here works in a job where sometimes things go wrong? Yes, or it doesn't always go as planned? Yes, that's what's happened to us this morning as far as getting everything happening. So it's this one. Let's see if the technology works. Sitting next to people you don't know. Would this be right? Yeah. I think that one of the purposes of today, and you'll see this will come through in my session, is to get to know other women. Right? So have you said hello to the lady that you're sitting next to? Yes? What about the lady you're sitting behind? Or in front of, depending on where you are? Excellent. So I want to encourage you in the session to get to know some different people. And I know the setup of our room is perhaps different than you may have had in the past. But I do want to encourage you to network with people, to get to know people. And I'm also not going to spend all my time just standing here. I am going to do things like come out and sit here. This is what Australians do, yes? Maybe not what Malaysians always do. Because you see, I can go anywhere with this microphone. I can come all the way up here and say hello to you, because I love your brooch. It's very beautiful. I might have to find out where you got that from. I do love I have a number of brooches at home that I bought here in Malaysia, and I wear them on evening gowns. Slightly crazy, but I like it very much. I found a list. I found two lists, actually. One was the top 100 women in Malaysia, but I thought, oh, I can't really use 100. Then I found another one is the top 10 women, and this was number 1. Now please, and this is what I want you to be a bit Australian today, I want you to yell out, who is this? And what does she do? Why is she important? Now who knows what the news, the world news of yesterday is? One of the pieces, obviously there's a lot. The US Reserve Bank is about to get its first ever female leader. And she is only the second one in the world. Right? So even in a country like the US, which you may perceive as being far more liberal, that women have come a lot further in their quest to be in leadership. It's the first time it's ever happened there. So she was number 1 on my list. Number 2, of course, was a lady that I am quite familiar with. Yeah. I have been coming to Malaysia since about 2008, and the very first work that I did here was through another organisation, was with Petronas. I believe we might even have some people from Petronas in the audience today. Is this right? You'll be nodding. Have I met any of you? If I have, I apologise if I don't remember you. I meet lots of people. But I was introduced to the idea of Nicole David because I was doing a session on understanding Generation Y for some of the, let's say, slightly conservative older male managers at Petronas. And they went, this Gen Y, there are none of them in Malaysia. This is what I was told. Is there anyone in this room who identifies themselves as a Generation Y? Yes? Does this get you into trouble at all? It gets all Generation Ys in all countries into trouble. But yes, they told me, Nicole David, who is currently, of course, the world's #1 female squash player. So Malaysia has a lot to be proud of. And of course, my third one, they went for a completely different industry. We all know who this is? Yes? Awesome laughing. Okay. Oops. I must say that I have not come across her, but then I am not the target audience, of course. But entertainer and businesswoman. So she's taken her skills as an entertainer and now turned it into business, and in fact has charities and all sorts of things that are designed to help other women to further themselves. So Malaysia has a lot of women leading the way. And you might look at some of these women and think, this is nothing like my life. I don't aspire to be like them. But I have a belief that if you have big goals and you don't achieve them, you will still achieve much. But if you set your sights very low and you don't achieve stuff, it's not going to feel much. How can I best express that? And we'll try this. Imagine you decided you want to save some money. Yes, you want to use it to go on a holiday or something, and you say to yourself, I'm going to save 2,000 ringgit. And you don't achieve that. You try, but you don't get there, and maybe you save 1,000 ringgit. What if your goal had been to save 20,000 and you missed it by the same amount, you saved half? Can you see how much bigger difference that makes? So if you aim big and you don't make it, you still make a big impression. If you aim small, you have small expectations, you're probably not going to make much difference at all. And there's a belief that if you have a goal and it doesn't scare you, and you think, oh, I'm not sure if I can make it, if it doesn't scare you, then it's not big enough. You're thinking too small. Now, it's not for me to say what that goal should be for you. It'll be different for everybody. But I encourage you to think big. To have the type of goal, as a woman, in your role, whatever organisation it is, the kind of goal that when you say it to someone, they go, no. Really? You think you're going to do that? Now, she was not necessarily popular. Not necessarily everybody liked her. I'm not saying that I necessarily liked her policies, etc. But I was very, very pleased when I realised that a woman was running my country. The first time ever. Because what I said to you before, maybe amongst you or the young women you know is the first female Prime Minister of your country. We used to say the same thing in Australia. Who is going to be our first female Prime Minister? It's symbolic. And I think symbolism is very important. Now, of course, we had an election recently and her government, her party, lost by a lot. The Australian people sent a very big message to say, and it wasn't just about her, it was about a whole range of things. And we now have a situation where our new Prime Minister, now there are no prizes for this, but who knows the name of the current Australian Prime Minister? Anyone? Tony Abbott, yeah. How do you think Australian women feel about Tony Abbott? Have you heard? Yes. Put it this way, we went from having a parliament that had many women in the cabinet, right? So that is the highest level of leadership. We had having many women, we now have one. And Tony Abbott has made himself the Minister for Women. I know. We're not laughing very much about it in Australia, I have to tell you. So, part of the reason for mentioning this is to say that it doesn't matter what country you're from, a bit like I was saying before about the US and having their first female leader of the Reserve Bank. It doesn't matter what country you're from or how liberal that you might think that country is. Women being in leadership is still controversial. And there are still inroads to be made as far as it being quite normal for women to be leading and in these powerful positions, whether it's in politics or elsewhere. And so I think in that way we do have some things, definitely have some things in common. Even at first glance you might think, how is an Australian woman related to us here in Malaysia? I think that there are a lot of commonalities. So a bit of controversy going on there. What was, advertised in our session. There are 5 key things that I want to look at, and I've deliberately highlighted some of those key words there. We're going to look at some barriers. We're going to look at strategies, particularly, let's learn a little bit from men and what they've done and how we can make use of that. Topics we could spend many days on. Okay? In fact, some people do entire degrees in them. So obviously we are only going to cover them in a surface way. But what I want to do is, by the time you leave here today, if you can walk away with one great idea, one thing that you are going to go away and do as a result of being here today, then it will have been successful. It would have been a good use of your time. Not just to do the networking that I talked about, but also to go away and say, yes, this is one thing that I can do. And at the end, I'm going to give you a little model that I use to help you figure out what that one thing might be for you. But I do want you to think as we go through, which of this is relevant for you in your situation. So we are a mixed audience with our different backgrounds, different roles. So you've got to think about what's going to be relevant in your situation, something that you can make a difference from this material. How to get the most out of today? Now we have given you copies of the slides. I deliberately didn't do, you need to do this activity. Today isn't about going through the workbook. Today is about thinking, discussing, challenging, So take your own notes, in English or whatever language you like, they're your notes. Contribute to the discussions. I am going to, although I know we're a big audience and in this kind of room, I'm going to encourage you to talk to people. So I'm going to give you various times I say, right, either with the ladies that are sitting near you or get up out of your seat and go somewhere else in the room if you need to and find some people to talk to, because it's those different opinions, different perspectives that are going to help you to get the most out of this session. And it's going to make noise. Can you see that? So I might have to use my very loud Australian voice to get you back. Either that or sometimes we tap on a glass of water with a pen, but I see that we don't have any glasses, so I might have to get one. We'll figure that out. Sometimes in Australia I bring a whistle or a bell, because they're very noisy. I didn't think I'd get that today. Ask questions of me, of your colleagues. You know, if you don't want to ask a question in the session, come and find me in a break. I'm very happy to talk to you. You know, and maybe if you have the question, others may as well, and it's something that I can then mention when we come back. And it doesn't, you know, I don't have to mention your name. Now, this last one here, or the second last one, number 4, I probably actually don't need to mention it so much in Malaysia, but certainly in Australia I do, because we are not very good listeners. We are very good talkers. Yes? But the Malaysian culture is far better at listening. So I'm sure that I could have actually left that one off, but I forgot. And the last one, and I'm very important, and they're very well organised here to do this, is stay lubricated. They've even organised my drink for me. Because your bed is definitely hotter in Malaysia than it is at home. And I find if I don't drink enough water, that I get not feeling very well by the end of the day. Yes? And I flew in overnight. I got in at 5 a.m. yesterday morning. So I had my jet lag day yesterday. My brain is now working 100%. It wasn't yesterday, and I learnt that when I tried to get from my hotel to the local shopping centre. Jet lag plus disorientation equals lost. And literally, I'm trying to get across this busy road, and there's nowhere to cross. Right? No public pedestrian crossing, no traffic lights. I'm going, what am I going to do? And a local lady comes past, and I look at her and I think, she seems to know where she's going. So I come up to her and I say hello, and then, do you speak English? Oh, yes. So she had a bit of English. Turned out she was a housekeeper in my hotel. And I said, look, I'm trying to get to the shopping centre, can you help me? Oh, yes, yes. She literally took me by the hand. And she's about this big. And we walked along, and people were looking at us. And she took me all the way to the shopping centre, which was lovely, I thought. Very nice. And certainly when I put that on Facebook last night and told some of my Australian friends, they thought it was hilarious. I would have taken her photo, but I think that might have been going too far. So, but definitely, stay lubricated. Make sure you drink lots of water, and I'm sure we'll have some lovely food and drinks in our various breaks that we're going to have along the way. Now, should I keep going? Yes, it is. And I'm looking around for our guest to arrive. No, she's not here yet. Please tell me when she gets here. Yes? No? Keep going? All right. Okay, good. Now, you've already heard a bit about my analogy that I use, that being a great leader is like being a great gardener. Do you like this garden? It's a bit tropical, isn't it? A bit Malaysian, yeah? I made this all by myself. I know. This is, I don't actually live in this house anymore. In Australia we call it a townhouse, so it's like a single story, but a little. In Australia we have quite big houses with big yards. This is quite little. In fact, this whole garden, it was not in a big square, but it was sort of spread out. It would be about as big as this area where I'm standing from nothing. There was just grass there and one half-dead tree. And I had a few people help me with heavy things, but I did the rest myself. And this was the start of my belief that being a great leader is like being a great gardener. And often when I talk about this in Australia, I ask people this question: do you have a green thumb? But I've learnt that that's not the expression that you use in Malaysia. What I need to ask you is, do you have a cold hand? I wasn't clever enough to actually learn how to say it in Malay, but my friend Dr. G here taught me this morning, didn't you? But who has a cold hand? Who is good at growing plants? Anyone? Oh, there's a lady up there. She's got her hand straight up. Yes, a few of you. Yes. Who has the cold hand? Sorry, the hot hand. The hot hand and kills the plants. Yes? Yes? Who's been given plants you go, oh no? And it's Malaysia, so everything grows here, doesn't it? You can watch it grow. There's bougainvillea on the balcony of my hotel, and I swear that I can see it grow. That's how warm it is here. In Australia, we would say that you have a brown thumb. So green thumb is good, brown thumb is bad. But I think that anybody can have the cold hand, the green thumb, if you have the knowledge, the skill, and importantly, the attitude. So whether you are someone who likes to garden or not, and it could be that your garden is simply a few little pot plants on your balcony or a few herbs that you grow, or you may be lucky enough to have a much larger garden. But of course, you live in a city full of gardens. This is my favourite thing to do in Malaysia, is to go anywhere where there's something green and look around. I see new things all the time. My favourite is lipstick palm trees. Have you heard of these? With the bright pink trunk? Yeah? And look out for them. That's the name we use in Australia anyway. We call them the lipstick palm. Very fast growing. So this is an analogy that I use, and I'm going to use it throughout the day. You'll see some different examples that I have. I say talk about the garden. It's growing or it's dying. Never stand still. You can't be static in an organisation. Something's always changing. You reap what you sow. So the idea that if you don't sow a lot of seeds, don't put a lot of ideas out, you'll have no results to get. It's uncontrollable. Who tries to control things where they work? Whenever I have a female audience, I ask, who are the control freaks? Who likes to control what's going on? Who likes to make sure their children are doing the right thing? That they're following instructions? In English, we would say you're the helicopter parent, because you hover. Yes? Is this a thing that happens in Malaysia? Yes, I know it does. Yeah. Okay, there's a new term. I don't know if this is only one we use in Australia. Helicopter parent who's very extreme, we call them a Black Hawk parent. You heard of the Black Hawk helicopter? Yes? Yeah. So do we have any Black Hawk mothers in the room? Maybe. They're not willing to put their hand up. But you can't actually control everything that goes on. And we're going to talk about that control aspect a little later on. And a garden is a great lesson in having to go with nature rather than against it. Require constant attention. You cannot leave the garden alone, you cannot leave the workplace alone. Who is actually worried about being away from the office for one day today, about what people are going to do while you're not there? Maybe it's something simple, like you're worried you're going to come back and everything on your desk has been moved. That means you are a control freak? If you didn't know. Not sure what the Malay word for that is, I'll have to check later. But it should be that, yes, you need constant attention, but you should be able to leave for a short while if you set things up so that people can operate without you. They understand what's the right thing to do while you're not there. And of course, no 2 days are the same. If you own a garden, every time you walk outside, you go, oh, I wonder what's happened today. That's what makes your roles interesting. The unexpected, the new things that are going to happen, rather than something to be afraid of. Now, as I was saying before, I travel regularly to this region. My 3 pictures represent 3 countries. So starting on this side, what country are you? I've been to China. What's the one in the middle? Singapore. I do love the super trees. Who's been to Gardens by the Bay? Yes, and climbed up. Well, you don't climb up, you get in an elevator to go to the top of the super tree. So I go to Singapore a lot, and of course, you must recognise the one on the end. Yes? It's kind of Asia. I learn as much from you as you might learn from me. And I can see there are some things that you do here that we could learn from in Australia, and maybe there are things that we do well that we can pass on to you. And I like that exchange. You know, and I like the fact that we can relate, you know, about things that are universal, either for all people or for all women. And I hope I can bring some of those experiences to what we're going to do today. Now, there's a lot of symbolism in what I do, and I couldn't not have this symbol here. So who knows what it is? It is the floral emblem of Malaysia. Now, hopefully I'm saying it right here. Bungarao? Bungarao. Oh, close, okay. I know, my Malay needs some work. I'm sure if I taught you some Australian expressions, your Australian would need some work, yes? We're even. But yes, it's when I was researching one of the books that I've written, I actually looked at the floral emblems of a few different countries, and I know that when I came across this one for Malaysia, which, you know, and it translates apparently into English to big flower, I think. It's red for a reason. The colour red has significance. The 5 petals have significance, and it is meant to represent, of course, the 5 national principles. So, you know, there's lots of symbolism that goes into plants. Now, who knows what the floral emblem of my country is? You didn't know this was going to be a geography test, did you? Anyone got any ideas? Put your hand up if you think you know what the floral emblem of Australia is. I don't have it on the slide, by the way. I'm just curious. Anyone know? No? Golden wattle. Now, golden wattle is a tree. It has very green leaves and bright golden flowers that come out. Now, if you sometimes see Australians competing in sports, we don't wear the red, white and blue, which is the colours on our flag. We wear green and gold because it looks like a wattle tree and it makes us stand out. In a tough country, you know, in tough environment, lots of desert and whatever else, that symbolises who we're about. And I know when I see this flower, I always think of Malaysia because look around this room. You are the most colourful audience I have seen in a long time. You are. And I'm always fascinated, you know, the fashion prevails regardless of the culture, doesn't it? Even though the culture here says that many of the women cover their hair, you still find a way to make fashion work, don't you? And I'm going to do a little test later when we go out and have the break, have lunch. I'm going to be looking at your shoes. Because some of you may be conservative on the top, but those shoes, yeah, you have some very, we say ridiculous shoes. Yes? Come on, who's wearing ridiculous shoes today? Who's going to win the ridiculous shoe competition? Yeah? I know. And in fact, the best example I ever saw of this was I did some workshops for the government of Brunei. Now, I've never been to Brunei before. Had a lovely time, including I got to see monkeys in the wild. I like animals, I'm very easily amused. I heard a cat outside before. I wanted to go and find it, but then I would have been running late. But I did this session in Brunei, and as I arrived, I saw all the ladies in their beautiful attire, very colourful, and then I looked down at their shoes. And then, of course, I got into the sessions that I was running. I ran two-hour sessions, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. The same subject, but different audiences. And the room was all chairs lined up, and there were 2 sides of the room, yeah, with a gap down the middle. All the ladies sat on this side, and all the gentlemen sat on this side. I've never had that before. It was very strange. Very strange for me. But I knew which side of the room I liked to look at the most, because A, it was the most colourful, and B, it had the most people who were smiling at me. Now, I don't know whether they were smiling at me because they thought I was a bit strange, or just being friendly, or what it was, but the gentlemen seemed very serious. Is this a national thing? I don't know. So, but I love this idea of this colourful audience full of faces that are very expressive. This is something that appeals to me very much. So I see that this Malaysian way, and I'm hoping that you are going to, a bit like this beautiful park, you are going to leave behind a legacy for the other women who come behind you. That even though you may not achieve everything you might want to achieve, You may not be the first female Prime Minister of Malaysia, or the head of your department, or whatever that next step is. But you are going to have helped to create that situation for someone else. And I think it's really important. One of the things that when you do the research, you find that maybe part of the problem is that those women who've been highly successful and done it the hard way, no one was there to help them, don't necessarily want to help other women because they see that there can be a limited number of places and that they don't want someone else to take their place. Now, I don't see that as the spirit of cooperation and collaboration. I would much rather see that we say, look, if I help any other woman, it's good for all of us. Just like if you help any other Malaysian, it's good for the whole country. Just like for me, when I come overseas and I hear a story or I see an Australian doing the wrong thing, being disrespectful of the culture, creating a bad impression, that reflects on me. As soon as I open my mouth and you realise I'm from that country, I've even had it, because I can say this because we don't have any Americans in the room, do we? Has anyone been to America? Educated in America? No. Sometimes when I travel and people look at me, they think I'm an American until I open my mouth. And then they treat me nicer. I'm not quite sure what that's about. But this idea of, the reputation that Australians have compared maybe to the Americans. And I know I'm getting into a bit of a stereotype here, but we are going to talk about stereotypes, so you'll see where this links in. Am I still going? It's funny, I keep waiting to be interrupted. There must be a big jam in the traffic today. Very big jam. We'll keep going, that's fine. So we want you to leave behind a legacy. So, one last thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the real problem material, how I use my analogy to demonstrate the difference. But what I want you to do right now, here's your opportunity to do some talking. When you hear me make lots of noise, that's when I need you back. But I just want you to turn to someone that you can find nearby, maybe in a small group, and ask them this question. What do you think is the difference between a manager and a leader? And if you can't think of anything to say, I will give you other opportunities to do this as we go throughout the day. But obviously, one of my goals, in my country anyway, very important that you finish on time. We call this dobbing. D-O-B-B-I-N-G, dobbing. She's dobbing in her friend and is saying, oh, she'll do it. Yeah. Do you have an answer for us? Yes?
Basically, it's to manage organizations, whereby the leader, in the bigger spectrum, he could be a manager and he will lead to achieve a goal of the organization.
Firstly, that I thrust the microphone at her and made her go first, after her friend dobbed her in. But it's a good answer. It is a good answer, and it is about what are the goals, what are the objectives. And you're right, that you can manage and lead at the same time. Yeah? Many people can be great managers, but not great leaders. Sometimes you can be a great leader and a terrible manager, because they're two different skills. It's very hard to get rid of people who don't do their job. Would this be true? None of you, of course. You're all very good at your jobs. Yes? But I know in my country, in Australia, people join the public sector because they see it as a safe, secure environment where, even if you're not great at your job, you still have a job.